SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Fanatics has steadily been taking market share in the online sports betting across the US since its 2023 launch. But there's been nothing steady about its prediction markets launch, as Fanatics Markets sports contracts hit 10 states, making it the first sports book to get out of the traps and to go live with prediction markets. So what is Fanatics' plans for sports contracts, and what does it tell us about the way the industry is moving? Welcome back to iGaming Daily, supported by Optimove, the creator of positionless marketing and the #1 player engagement platform. I'm Charlie Horner, and today to discuss all of this, I'm joined by SBC Media's managing editor, Jessica Welman. Jess, how's it going?
It's good. Of course, this information, unsurprised to those who follow me on Twitter, dropped while I was on an airplane, because this has just been the way it's gone for the past couple of months.
Yeah. If Jess isn't sat at her desk working, you can best be sure
it'll be a
that
slow
big
news day. That's just how it's gone lately. Oh, well.
Brilliant. Well, this is a big story. This is essentially what we've been building up to all year long. All of our prediction markets and sports contract discussions have kind of been leading to this moment where a regulated US sportsbook is now offering sports contracts. So how about you give us the brief? What is the product and where is it live?
All right. So the product is called Fanatics Markets. It is a standalone app. It is completely separated from Fanatics Sportsbook. However, my understanding is, like everything in the Fanatics universe, your accounts can be connected. I need to verify, like, on funding, that may be not quite the case, but like earning points and that sort of thing. I think it does exist in this larger Fanatics space because, for those who need the reminder, this is a company that like made its millions selling hats. Hats, jerseys, merchandise, that sort of thing. So standalone app initially rolled out in 10 states, truly the 10 of the least relevant states in the union, if I do say so myself. Alaska, Delaware, Hawaii, Idaho, Maine, New Hampshire, North Dakota, Rhode Island, South Dakota, and Utah. They said, in the next week or two, we're talking a very short window, that number will more than double and will expand to 24 states. That longer list includes some states that are a little more substantial in terms of potential audience and market, like California, Florida, Georgia, Minnesota, Texas, those sorts of things. So yeah, the product itself, it's its own thing, hosted crypto.com contracts through the Fanatics app. The plan is, right now it's just sports. It will eventually include kind of all the things that crypto.com offers, like the weather, pop culture, whether Donald Trump will wear a blue tie or a red tie in the State of the Union speech, those kinds of things, with clear economic impact and financial utility. But yeah, that's kind of the plan, is to expand into the culture space in addition to sports for the product as it grows.
We'll jump into that longer list in the second half and some of the ramifications of that. But the initial 10 states you mentioned aren't the big sports betting states that you might assume they might launch in.
I mean, half of them don't even have gambling, period, right? Like Utah, that's one. They don't have the lotto. They don't have anything. Hawaii.
Yeah, this is significant for the sports fans in Utah. But do you think this has been strategically picked so there's no regulatory pushback from any sports betting regulator? Is this just dipping our toes in, making sure that the product works, we don't get in trouble from the get-go?
Yeah, the initial 10, I think, yes, these are the ones where, as someone who, when you roll out something new and complicated, I used to produce the live streams of the World Series of Poker, and there's a lot of moving parts. You kind of want your first event to be like some piddly small buy-in event in a boring variety like Raz so that you can test everything and make sure it all works. So I think the idea is, let's get this out. Let's make sure it works. And let's pick one, low population states where we're not going to like overburden our system. And two, states in which any potential regulatory hurdles are minimal, because in the case of like Utah and Hawaii, there's not even really a regulatory body to send you a cease and desist. You would kind of need like the AG of the state to send you something. And then the rest of them, what's interesting is there are a couple on here that, we can talk about this more in the back half. They do actually offer online sports betting, but it's like a monopoly model. It's one operator that is not Fanatics. It's very, very small. So yeah, I think these were just kind of picked as the easiest to clear states. I do not know, to be perfectly candid, exactly what clearances you need to mount and deploy something like this on like the CFTC side of things, which is the body that regulates event contracts and prediction markets. Generally, because it's a federal body, you do everything at a national level and you don't need to do things at state levels. But I don't know what kind of hoops are at the state level that may have played a role. But looking at this list, to me, you're picking what are the 10 least active gaming states in the United States, and that's where you're starting.
Yeah, so we've got this phased approach. So there's 10 states initially, another 14 in a few weeks. What about the rest? Are we expecting this to be rolled out nationwide? What has Fanatics leadership said, or Fanatics betting and gaming leadership said about the strategy for this?
I believe they've said like that, just like everybody else, I think nobody's going to risk their licensure in states where they are already licensed. With Matt King's statement from the press release, we're giving fans a safe and intuitive way to engage with the moments that move sports and culture. In an interview on CNBC, he very clearly said, he's been media trained, unlike Kalshi's entire ad campaign. He'd be like, well, it's trading, it's different. Do we see a version of Fanatics Markets where the non-sports stuff shows up in these states? I don't know if down the line, maybe. I know with some of FanDuel and what they've said, they've kind of at least not explicitly ruled that out. But as we've, the handle on that stuff's non-existent. And I think what we've talked about with prediction markets is this is a utility to help you gain market access to states that don't have sports betting you can't get into for the time until sports betting launches or in perpetuity. And if the courts, rule in Kalshi's favor, then maybe there's a huge conversation to have about which angle does Fanatics go down. But for now, this is more just a solution for states where they can't offer their actual product.
I think that point is particularly important in the case of Fanatics as well, because you've got to remember that context that Fanatics is also a huge sports merchandise retailer, and getting access with all those sports not bettors in other states allows for those synergies across retail and non-sports betting, financial trading, predictions.
What's interesting too, though, I think your point of like, would they do some version of this elsewhere? I have not downloaded and looked at it myself because I am in a state nor near a state that I'm nowhere near a market where I could actually have this app and use it. I think I could probably download it and not start an account, though. The screenshots I've seen, this app looks markedly different than the screenshots you see from Kalshi and Crypto.com and even Underdog and Prize Picks and how they are integrating it, where it is seemingly designed for sports bettors to understand the layout. It, to me, looks a lot more kind of intuitive. And if you recall, like when Matt King came to SBC Summit Americas, a couple of years ago, he said like they really, really put a lot of investment into product. So I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to kind of fine tune and hone the product on this to make it stand apart. And in this case, they're a first mover instead of a second mover, and they've still come out with something that is kind of new and interesting and different to what exists on the market.
Yeah, and this is something that I think all of the main sportsbook operators have said, which is our product is just better than what is available with prediction markets as they currently exist. They're more intuitive for the sports fans. So we'll see how players resonate with that and keep an eye on the rollout as it continues to happen. But I think one of the interesting things here is that a few weeks ago, the last time we talked about this, Fanatics hadn't even formally announced a deal with Crypto.com, and now they're first out of the trap. So how did they move so quick to do this? It seems quite interesting to me that they are the first.
So remember a few months ago when we were talking about that, we had run a story about the fact that there were like 3 or 4 different sports betting related entities. It was like Prize Picks, Underdog, DraftKings, Fanatics, all had kind of pending registrations with the National Futures Association. Mm-hmm. And these were all an attempt to like be connected and kind of greenlit to work with an FCM, which is, it's like a futures commercial market, I believe, but basically a platform that can host a DCM like Kalshi on it. And I thought that was kind of the entryway they were going down. When the news broke, I was like, I wonder if the NFA approval got through. And I went and looked, and that's when I learned, and they confirmed via press release, they quietly acquired a company in like July or August, called Paragon Global Markets. So similar to DraftKings, they just quietly went out and bought what they needed to turn on the switch here. So unlike like a FanDuel who kind of had to broker a partnership, they just went out and found somebody that is an introducing broker, which is what they were trying to seek on the NFA and we're still waiting for approvals on. And they did that. And then in return, they were able to kind of speed up the process because we've seen Prize Picks had gotten their NFA approval, but nobody else had really made much progress. So that is what enabled them to kind of stand up and do this version of prediction markets, that's their own app, and something a bit different than what you'd seen on, say, Underdog, which is like a tech partner, which kind of limits exactly the nature and scope of what they can do and how they incorporate Crypto.com contracts.
Yeah, the benefits of being a private company and not having to
disclose financial
information about buying a company. Yeah. And futures commission merchant.
There it is.
Was the term we were after. Brilliant. Well, let's take a quick break and take a bit of a breather because that was quite a lot to digest.
I know, like I should have been a CPA apparently because this is my life now too.
Brilliant. Let's take a short break and we'll be back soon.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
Welcome back to iGaming Daily. Today we're talking all about Fanatics being the first to launch sports prediction markets out of the major US sports books. Jess, we mentioned in the first half that one of the states that Fanatics is rolling out in is Delaware. And there's a couple of others where there are some form of online sports betting. Do you think that the Delaware gaming enforcement and some of these other regulators in those states could be a bit of a litmus test for Fanatics? And do you think we'll see any pushback from a regulatory perspective?
So Delaware gaming is like generally done in tandem with the lottery. And from what I've noticed, like the lottery is just like, leave us alone. We don't want to deal with anything that is not us. So right now, like that group is, you look at like sweeps and stuff. They haven't sent cease and desist on that. They haven't been vocal about prediction markets. Also, the existing Delaware market is not big. I mean, the population of Delaware is something like it's 1 million. So you're not talking a huge sum of people that, like, I would think if I'm FanDuel and Delaware's like, psst, leave, they would just be like, okay, bye. Like this is not a big loss on our hands. But given that Delaware's partner is Rush Street, and unless like Rush Street were to maybe make a big stink about it, but they've been relatively kind of agnostic about prediction markets. I've not heard Schwartz say anything about it. I doubt something happens there. Similarly, Rhode Island has a relationship for online casino and stuff with Bally's. I haven't heard Bally's be like MGM and Caesars and particularly vocal. However, they are a more traditional brick and mortar company, even with this whole intralot thing that I don't know how involved they're necessarily going to get in this space. And keep in mind, their tech partner is only going to be able to yell. They're not going to be able to actually do anything. Out of all 24 of these states, there is one on my list that is interesting. Or, well, you know what? Caveat it, too. I lied. One that most interesting to me is Wisconsin, because there is actually currently a lawsuit pending in which Wisconsin tribes have sued Kalshi. And Kalshi's argument, I don't believe I've read every last piece of paperwork on this particular one, has generally been something very nuanced in terms of the nature of their compact with the state. But like, it's not the regulator, right? It's the tribes that are suing them. Similar California, but California, they already lost the injunction challenge there. The tribes did at least. The fact that they're going into those states where the tribes are suing is intriguing to me, because you don't know where that's going to land. Again, as soon as something goes against them, I'm pretty sure in all 24 of these states, as soon as a lawsuit gets filed against them or a C&D gets sent to them, I would invest in a lot of prediction markets that Fanatics would get the F out. Because so many regulators in other states have said, we will yank your license and not think about it if you operate what is perceived to be illegal sports betting in a state where a regulator has said, we think this is illegal sports betting. So I think any of these could kind of come down quickly. But these tribal ones is a little different when it's like, okay, well, like the Ho Chunk band of Indians thinks it's illegal sports betting, but that's not a regulator. So that might be kind of the differentiator here into why they're more comfortable going into this space. Like the California one, again, Kalshi is winning so far, so that doesn't surprise me as much. Wisconsin, we haven't gotten a ruling yet, but I'd be curious what happens if Wisconsin loses. I do think Fanatics will probably do what FanDuel and DraftKings and others have said, which is you already have these contracts with GeoComply, and to just avoid the issue altogether, you're going to just geofence out all of the different tribes in a state that you're in. Because that is the argument in the California one, that you cannot conduct gaming on tribal lands. And if you remove tribal lands from the equation, they actually kind of lose grounds to sue you. You know what I mean? So I think that kind of solves that problem. And then the only other one that's like the big unanswered question for everybody is Florida. Again, this is a tribal thing. Seminole has the compact, but we've seen that regulator go after fantasy. I'm hearing rumblings that there's a lot of push for them to go after sweeps. There was just a new bill introduced to like really codifying the law even further, that if you are not a Seminole compacted form of gaming online, you're not legal in the state. And while I doubt a law like that would necessarily be enforceable, or at the very least it would have a legal challenge from Kalshi, like arguably this would fall in there. Florida's another one where I'm curious when these guys come in, if they advertise hard, what happens?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot.
Yeah, that was a long answer. Sorry.
But no, I think it's really important to get the context of all the moving parts, because this is complicated. There's a reason why we've been talking about it for around 12 months now. I think the California one is one of those where the opportunity is too big, right? You do this so you can get to California and you can access all of those young, rich sports fans who want to bet somewhat legally. I think Florida, Wisconsin, a little bit more complicated. But I think Delaware could be the one where, okay, if Delaware says to Fanatics, yeah, we need you to leave, fine, they will leave. But that sets a precedent to other state regulators who might be thinking, well, Delaware told them to leave. Maybe we tell them to leave too. I don't know whether there's a spanner in the works there. There's obviously a state system where there's no precedent, but they might be an argument. I don't know what you think about that, Jess.
You need statutes to lean back on. So it does depend kind of language of the law, what the statute is. And that statute has to have teeth and legal meat to it to back it up. Like Mississippi is a good example of one where if say Delaware does something like that, or say Mississippi does this. Mississippi has legal retail sports betting, as does Wisconsin. It's tribal, never mind. Commercial retail sports betting is legal in Mississippi. And I believe in the statute, it stipulates online is not. So Mississippi, which has been motivated to take action against other people in the past, there is potentially room for them to say, get out. And again, Mississippi, not a big state, also not a particularly wealthy state. So Fanatics is just going to say okay. But that's kind of one where maybe you can do something. If it is something like a Texas or a Georgia, where there's just not a lot of law on the books, and this is the problem that happens with sweeps too, is just if you only have these really broad laws about gambling and you don't have particular statutes related to gaming, there's not a lot of law to back up a letter saying get out. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's the same reason why sweeps are going to thrive for at least another couple of years in these states, because there is no regulatory body to tell them to get out. And there's not a lot of law with much meat to it to actually stand up and say, you're violating Section 42, subsection N of this law, and you need to leave.
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on. We'll continue to monitor it as we have done. So something else that is going to be a bit uncertain moving forward is Fanatics membership of the American Gaming Association, because it was only a couple of weeks ago that we were talking about FanDuel and DraftKings maybe jumping before they were pushed. As far as we're aware, Fanatics is still a member.
Fanatics is still a member. Is my understanding. I did send a follow-up email and did not receive comment either way. But at the announcement of the Crypto.com deal, I was just verifying Fanatics is still a member today. And at that point, the confirmation from both sides was, yes, we are still a member. I don't know if this changes things. It's certainly something that your member launched the thing that seemed to be the straw that broke the camel's back for FanDuel and DraftKings. That I don't know if they will continue to be members, but we shall see. But yeah, it's very interesting that they kind of laid low on that first round of this. There was a big meeting and they didn't, perhaps maybe as big a stink about it because they hadn't announced these things yet. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that shakes out. And I don't know what happens on it, to be perfectly honest.
No, I'm not sure, not 100% certain either, but it does question the AGA's future strategy, and we talked about that at
that's
length
a whole
in
other
a
thing.
pod a few weeks ago.
Teaser,
we'll leave a link to
we're
that.
prepping our end of the year content, and one of my observations about this year is how much we have reverted back to dividing lines that I thought were never going to exist again.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree. I think we are looking at something maybe a decade, two in the past.
We're talking being 10
rewritten.
to 15 years ago. We're going right back to it. It's very, very interesting. And then, all this for, by the way, I think something we haven't talked about on the pod, this is not some venture that's just printing money. This is all just kind of speculation that it's going to be a big deal and that they might win and that you want to be there just in case, because Polymarket came back into the US to its wait list. That announcement was like 2 hours before Fanatics, and we thought that would be the big news of the day. So I think the idea was just like, well, we don't want to let CalciCrypto.com and Polymarket get this huge lead on us with a new generation of customers. But like, this is not a $1 trillion industry, because you're just making fees on the exchanges and processing them, unless you're the market maker for some of these, which the Calci affiliates and crypto that exists, but like, it's not big money. And I mean, there's still questions of if it will be, because I think everybody's kind of, as you acknowledged in the first half of the show, it's not like this product's better than sports betting. You would have to go find like the real Kalshi stands on social media to tell you that this is better. But like, there is a reason that Sport Trade came in with this exchange model, and that is how they went and sold it hard, that it's like, we're going to do 1 cent to $1 and you buy contracts and stuff, and that they abandoned that approach in how they marketed it, because the average sports bettor is like, no, thank you. That sounds complicated.
It is a bit more complicated, and we see it with products like Betfair. While they are popular, they are for the more sophisticated sports bettors, I would imagine. But hey, they're predicting that it's going to go well, and we'll wish them all the best of luck in that. But Jess, we've done it again. We have run way over time, and we could continue to talk about this for a while, but I will just finish up with 1/2 more questions before we end. One, do you think that this is opening the gates and we'll see the rest of the pack go live imminently? And then as an addendum to that, do you think that this is sort of the beginning of a new chapter for this industry? I
mean, I think it's kind of granted, I spend too much time on social media. I think this is more a broad societal transition that feels, to me at least, bigger than gambling, where the concept of just wagering on any and everything is becoming commonplace, where, you know, that transition and opening of that floodgate is something, you know, like that's beyond just regulated sports betting and casino gaming and stuff. Like, when you hear Tarek Mansour and Shane Copeland speak, that's their goal, is to offer these kinds of things on everything. And I think that there's going to be a broad societal discussion on whether or not this is a good thing. You know, you had a guy yesterday who knew what like it worked at Google and knew what the top search terms were for the end of the year that they were going to release, and made like $400,000 doing insider trading. I believe someone at Spotify who knew like what the leaked like wrapped playlists were going to be, made a bunch of money. Like, there's going to be, if you thought the NBA scandals were bad, this is like out in the open insider trading. And it's kind of a feature, not a bug. Like, that's going to explode and be a big conversation. And I know our producer's screaming that we're going over, but like, that's a big shift in how society was, you know, like I get that younger people don't really conceive of gambling the same way that people of my age or my parents' age do. But like, the fact that you are less than a lifetime removed from gambling being something that exclusively happened in Nevada and New Jersey, and maybe you do it once or twice when you go on vacation. If you do it any more than that, society's probably going to think you're a degenerate. Two, you can gamble on literally anything is a huge shift to undergo in the span of 75 years.
It's a huge shift, quite scary. And we've not even mentioned that Kalshi has now done deals with both CNN and CNBC. So we've got prediction markets on the news, which is perhaps another indicator of where society is going. But Jess, I'm going to put Anaya out of her misery and bring this one to a close. Thank you very much for joining me on this one today. It's been a great discussion. And thank you to the listeners for joining us for another episode of iGaming Daily. And come back tomorrow to keep up to date with all the latest global gambling news.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.